Hey everyone, it's our 169th Deck Tech. If you're liking the videos here on YouTube, go ahead and hit subscribe, ring our bell, and then you'll know every time we make one of these. It'll be really great, and you can come here and comment and be the first people to do so. Yeah, go ahead and do that if you're loving the videos. But here we go. Let's get into this Deck Tech.
Okay, who are we brewing around this week? It is Taigam, Ojutai Master. We're hitting Azorius. Taigam is 2 white blue. You may recall that there is another Taigam that is black and blue. This is the white blue. This is the Azorius Taigam. Taigam is a legendary creature. Human monk is 3/4. Instant, sorcery, and dragon spells you control can't be countered by spells or abilities. That's cool. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell from your hand, if Taigam Ojutai Master attacked this turn, that spell gains rebound. And there's a little bit of a reminder text here that tells us what rebound is. Basically, rebound is cast a spell now, and then on your next upkeep, you get to cast it again for free.
Yeah, exactly. So this is a commander that I've often, ever since it came out, I was like, oh man, what a unique thing. What a bunch of what two cool things smashed in together. So this is the first time we've actually got to use it. So this is fun. This is a neat commander. And what are we doing this week? Well, not only are we doing Taigam, Ojutai Master, but specifically there's a cool synergy with another card that really is what the deck is built around, but also just we're trying to just make it work without that too. But you're going to see a lot of synergy with a little card called Dovescape. Dovescape is 3 and then 3 Azorius hybrid, so 6 in total for an enchantment that says whenever a player casts a non-creature spell, counter that spell. That player puts X 1/1 white and blue bird creature tokens with flying into play, where X is the spell's converted mana cost. Whew. So that is a pretty serious bit of text there. Non-creature spells get countered and turn into birds.
From everybody.
Everyone, including you.
Now
that is unless you have Taigam, Ojutai Master, your commander, on the battlefield, because he says that instant sorcery and dragon spells you control can't be countered by spells or abilities. So this would be the ability on Dovescape. So what actually will happen here is if you have Dovescape on the battlefield and Taigam, if you go to cast a non-creature spell, like let's just say, Divination, the 3 mana draw 2, you will Dovescape will attempt to counter it. It can't counter it. So Divination will happen, but you will still get the birds. You'll still get those 3 birds from that 3 mana spell that you're casting.
Yes.
Because it doesn't say it has to be countered or anything like that. It's just that then a separate thing, that player puts that many birds out. So that's the cool synergy, the sort of no spoiler alert, but the neat move that we're working with, that we're kind of building around and trying to make work for us.
Yeah, I feel like the key for Dovescape, they would have said if a spell is countered this way, put birds down. But they didn't say that. They just said put some birds down. There's no ifs.
Yeah, there's no if. There's nothing like that. So that's what we're dealing with. I was gonna say. Okay, so just a Dovescape off right at the bat is a card that's going to generate a lot of hate. So because people don't like it when you stop them from doing stuff that they should be normally allowed to do, right? So just being able to be what, I can't cast non-creature spells anymore, that's going to generate a lot of hate. But and I don't like cards that do that either. I don't like cards that lock people out. I think it's kind of it's rough. But this card isn't as bad because A, you can still cast creatures, so any creature deck isn't really going to care about Dovescape. And B, you can still get something for the cards in your hand. So it's not like one of those weird chaos locks where what's it called? Something thoughts, that red enchantment that makes you look for, you try to cast an instant, but then it looks for the next instant in your deck, but then it's got something that stops you from casting things from your deck or something like that. It's not one of those types of locks. It's not something that just all of a sudden now players can't cast spells. Basically, you're still going to get stuff. You're still going to get value. You can still defend yourself against me, the player who's built this deck, because you will have your own birds, right? If you want. So yeah. It's not a hard lock. It's a pretty soft lock. And then also, you just get rid of it's hard to get rid of the enchantment unless it's on a creature.
Right.
But
Hope
yeah,
you got a reclamation sage.
yeah,
in there.
you do need a reclamation sage or something of that ilk. But yeah, anyways, let's get into talking about how we're gonna make this work and what is gonna really what's really gonna happen here. So
Oh man, we're gonna need ways to get
yes.
since Dovescape is a huge part of this deck. We're gonna need ways to get Dovescape rolling. One of those ways is Lost Auramancers. 2 white for a human wizard that's 3/3 with Vanishing 3. So it comes into play with 3 vanishing counters on it, and every upkeep you remove a counter, and if all the counters are gone, you sacrifice it. And we want this creature to last that many turns because when Lost Auramancers is put into a graveyard, if it had no time counters on it, that is to say it sort of vanished on its own, you may search for an enchantment, put it into play. If you do, shuffle your library. Your opponents, if they know what this deck is, they might not let that happen too easily, but I mean, anytime you see someone with this like ticking tutor, they should remove it because you're up to shenanigans if it's on the battlefield. But if they don't, that's the way to get our Dovescape or one of our other cool enchantments if we already have it.
Yeah, there's a number of good enchantments here, so anything that's going to let you go get one is going to be pretty valuable. Lost Auramancers is admittedly not a great tutor. You cast this creature and it has to sit there for 3 turns before anything happens with it. But this is where we're at with searching for enchantment cards when we don't want to spend $20 doing so. So there's Lost Auramancers. We also have, of course, the classic Plea for Guidance, which is 6 mana sorcery. Says it's a 5 and a white and says you get to find 2 enchantments and put them into your hand. Then shuffle your library. And then what's this other one we got here? This one's kind of cool.
Another way we can get to it without tutoring is just by digging really deep. So how about Aminatu's Augury? 6 blue for a sorcery. It came from the new commander set from, guess what, Aminatu's deck.
Mm-hmm.
It says exile the top 8 cards of your library. You may put a land card from among them onto the battlefield. Until the end of turn, for each non-land card type, you can cast a card of that type from among the exiled cards without paying its mana cost. It's a complicated way of saying you get one of every type of card out of the 8 that you saw. If one of them is our Dovescape, we're putting that straight into the battlefield. We get a land we've got a nice mix of instant sorceries, creatures. So I think Aminatu is going to be a good way to get it. And guess what? If we already have Taigam out, we're going to be able to do this twice with Rebound if we've been able to activate, sort of trigger Taigam's ability there. So if we can do this twice, once now, once on our upkeep, that's 16 cards deep. That's pretty good.
That's pretty good. And I want to take the time right now to just quickly point out that Taigam has that text of whenever you cast an instant sorcery spell from your hand, if it's attacked, the spell gains Rebound. So Rebound is just this really cool bonus we have in this deck that's going to work with Dovescape or without it. For cards like Aminatu's Augury, this card's going to be good again, whether we have Dovescape already or not. And that's aside from like the odd tutor, like your Plea for Guidance and your Lost Auramancers. That's how this deck is going to hopefully work. Like it's going to be happy to use these cards either whether or not we have Dovescape or not. So one of the really cool things that you have to do though is kind of sometimes allow for Taigam to be unblockable, which reminds me of our first neat move.
Working on a
Neat
move.
So first neat move is a very neat move, and I think I've actually used this card once before, but it's one that whenever time I see it now, I'm like, oh, I just discovered this.
I discovered this.
Yeah, I just found this, even though I definitely have used it before. But this is Ethereal Usher, which is 6 mana, 5 and a blue for a 2/3, and it's a spirit. And why would I include this card? Well, because it has the text, pay blue, tap, target creature is unblockable this turn. Sweet. But that's actually just the bonus. Really what this card is in here is for the transmute ability, which is you can pay the transmute cost, discard this card, and then find a card in your deck with the same converted mana cost. So the CMC of this card is 6. The CMC of Dovescape happens to also be 6. There's also a couple other really great cards in this deck that are 6 CMC. So transmute on this one is 1 blue. So Ethereal Usher is going to be good if we need to get Dovescape, if we want to get something else, or if we want to allow Taigam to be unblockable every turn for a pretty cheap cost. So Ethereal Usher kind of does everything you want to do in this deck. It's great.
Sounds neat to me.
Yeah, very neat. Transmute it's an underrated like tutor. If you need a tutor in blue without black, I always look to find a transmute card that can help out. And it just adds even more. Like we're not just adding this as this one card tutor. Like this actually does have synergy even if we don't use it for its transmute ability, which is great.
Yeah, it's a good, especially because we can use both sides. It's so good.
Yeah.
Ooh, here's a spicy card we've never been able to brew with before. It's a Monastery Mentor. 2 and a white for a human monk that is 2/2. It has prowess, so whenever you cast a non-creature spell, it gets bigger. And then whenever you cast a non-creature spell, put a 1/1 white monk creature token with prowess onto the battlefield. So we're looking ahead to Dovescape where we're making a lot of birds. This sort of makes another more tokens as well. We're sort of building a little bit of a token strategy here.
Yeah.
And all the little tokens that this dude makes also have prowess. So this card is just fantastic. It's played in a lot of formats, and no wonder it's a little bit on the pricier side, but we've made room for it.
Yeah, we've made room for it, and like you said, we haven't been able to do this card before, so it's really fun to be able to include it now in this deck. Not only is it Cons themed and Fate Reforged themed, anyways, but it works so well with casting our instants and sorceries and making a bunch of tokens. Okay, next neat move is Darian, King of Keldor. 4 white for the 3/3 legendary human soldier. Whenever you're dealt damage, you may create that many 1/1 white soldier creature tokens. So, I'll tell you right now, you're not really going to get any soldier tokens in this deck from Darian. That is like for us a completely bonus thing that may happen if someone isn't paying attention to what you have on the board and they attack you. But what really this is there for, and there's a whole suite of these cards, is to deter attacks, right? So this not on the surface it looks like it's a token maker, which it can be, but it's probably not going to be. It's really there as like to deter your opponents from attacking you with their birds that they're going to make. So if you get your Dovescape out there, you got birds, you've attacked with those birds, so they're all tapped down. If Darian's out there, you might say, okay, yeah, fine, like attack me if you want, but I'm going to get that many more tokens from it, which is going to fuel my strategy. So of course no one will attack you, with Darian out. So that's what it's there for. We have some other cards in here that are going to do the same thing. Some cards help you like draw cards, some just make them pay mana for it and stuff like that. But Darian is just an interesting one that kind of works on both sides of it. It can make you tokens if I don't know, like I said, someone forgets. That's the only time, aside from a dedicated Darian deck, that I've ever made tokens with Darian, is if people forget what Darian does, or they don't care. They're like, what? I'll just attack you. It's like, okay, great, thank you.
I mean, yeah, because your opponents may team up on you if Dovescape is down. If no one has a creature way to get rid of it, and they're like, well, none of us can now get rid of this, so our only option is to kill you with birds. Yeah. So you legit need a few deterrents in there. I think Darian's a great one.
And it's also going to be one that will just help you survive into the later game, into you finding Dovescape. So let's talk about once you have Dovescape, what are some of these neat moves?
Oh, this is what the deck's all about. Do you want to take the first one? This is your idea. I feel you should take this first one.
So this one, any Dovescape player, I think, who's played EDH will know this card, and it's Guile. I have this in just a general like counter heavy Ifara deck that I have, but Guile is amazing with Dovescape. So Guile's 3 blue, so 6 mana for an elemental incarnation, a 6/6. Can't be blocked except by 3 or more creatures, so it has like super menace, weirdly. If a spell or ability you control would counter a spell, instead exile that spell, and you may play that card without playing its mana cost. And then also when if Guile's ever put in a graveyard, you shuffle it into your library. So, so the main thing we care about here is this countering ability, right? So if you counter a spell, if anything you control would counter a spell, it gets like exiled. Dovescape. It gets countered, but then it also gets put into exile, and you can play that. You can play that without paying its mana cost. So basically, it turns all your counters into stealing those spells, right? That's the idea with Guile. So in my normal counter deck, I counter your, Grave Titan. Now I get a Grave Titan because I've countered it and stolen it. But go ahead.
For the rules point of view, so I'm trying to work this through. So my Dovescape would counter your spell, but instead, this is a replacement effect. What happens instead is that spell gets exiled. So technically, that spell was not countered. So yes. Do they still get birds?
Yeah. So if a spell or ability you control would counter a spell, instead you exile it and you may pay. So remember, we don't need to counter a spell to get the birds, right? Neither does our opponent.
I see. So they'll still get birds.
Yeah. So everyone will still get their birds, and that's very key because with Guile, if you cast or I guess if anyone really, but if you cast like, let's go back to the same example. You cast Divination. It's 3 mana. It's to draw 2 cards. With Guile, it will get countered with Dovescape, it will get countered. But if you have Guile out at the same time, the countering puts the spell on in exile. We get 3 birds because, like we said, it doesn't need to be countered to get the birds. But then you just have this exiled spell that you're now allowed to cast without paying its mana cost. So you go to cast it with Guile. It gets countered by Dovescape and gets put into exile again. You get 3 birds.
Yeah.
You get infinite birds with Guile. You get infinite birds. So this is a way to end the game.
Wow.
So Guile is this crazy combo. Like I said, anyone who plays Dovescape, I'm pretty sure they probably include Guile in that deck because it's just such a crazy combo. So yeah, there you go. This is probably the neatest move. It's the closest thing to Taigam. So Taigam will get you Taigam lets you cast your spells as well as get the birds. But Guile lets you go infinite with more birds, but you don't actually get your spell if you don't have Taigam.
Wow. Cool. That's a very neat move.
Very neat move. I love this neat move too.
Yeah, this is very good. This is a very neat move as well. Suture Priest, 1 and a white for a cleric. That's 1/1. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may gain 1 life. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under an opponent's control, you may have that player lose 1 life. So we're dropping birds all over the place. We're going to be gaining life from those birds, and our opponents are going to be losing life from those birds.
Oh man,
neat.
This gets closer to creating an actual lock, right? Like, which I'm a little weary of, but Suture Priest was too sweet to not include, right? Like, now your spells are hurting you, like as they're giving you the birds. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Giving you the bird.
Giving you the bird. Flipping you the bird. Yeah, I'll flip you a couple birds, but guess what? I'm also gonna flip you a couple birds. This one is like kind of a like small neat move, but it's a nice one to include and a nice one to think about. It's called Make a Stand. 2 and a white for an instant that says creatures you control get +1/+0 and gain indestructible until end of turn. So it's not even necessarily with Dovescape out. It's more about after you have all your birds. Maybe someone's even dealt with Dovescape at this point. This is a way to protect your board, obviously, but it's also a way to push damage through. Obviously, with Taigam out, we will get Make a Stand, but they won't be able to have cast a board wipe anyway. So like Dovescape is kind of its own protection from like wraths and from destruction, all that. That's why you won't find a lot of like I don't know, make things make an enchantment hexproof or something. I don't know, you can't even really do that, but Make a Stand is just a great thing to have in a token deck when you're looking to protect your board.
Yeah, and
like, it makes you 3 birds if you have Dovescape out.
Right, we talked about Monastery Mentor. We have a lot of token generators in here. Darian, so like if we have a super wide board, Make a Stand becomes a finisher.
Yep, absolutely.
Cool. Let's talk about Windreader Sphinx. This is so neat. 5 blue for a 3/7 Sphinx. It has flying, and whenever a creature with flying attacks, aka a bird, you may draw a card. So again, right? This is just so neat with Dovescape. If we attack out, we get to draw per bird. If anyone with birds attacks any direction, we get to draw a card. I just love Windreader Sphinx in general. Even if this is a card I will think about putting in a deck, even if I don't have a ton of flyers, like if I just have like flying non-token creatures, even if I may get a card or 2 a turn. First of all, a card a turn is great.
It's pretty good, yeah.
I'll take that. But now your opponents are just like, ugh. I mean, does it draw too much hate? Because like, well, if I'm going to let someone draw a card from attacking, I guess I'll attack the person who's drawing the card with it. I don't know.
But then you get this 3/7, like, I mean, unless they have something really big. Yeah, it's interesting. I've never played with Windreader Sphinx. And you know what? It would be interesting to know whether or not it draws too much hate. How many cards does it actually draw you in like an average case and all that? But I mean, in this deck, we're looking pretty good just because of our own stuff. So obviously we can keep track of our own things. So we will have a lot of birds. So we're going to be drawing cards off our own birds. But it's interesting to know how like to like think about how many would you like. How willing are people going to be attacking with flyers if you have this card out? Probably not willing. It probably just stops attacks with flyers, which is kind of what you want in this deck too. So that's great.
No problem.
This is one that you suggested, and I think is a really cool little neat move here. Is Nezahal, Primal Tide. 5 blue for the 7/7 Elder Dinosaur, legendary. Nezahal can't be countered. That's a bit of a running theme in the deck. You have no maximum hand size, which is really good with Wind Reader Sphinx. And whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, draw a card. And then you can discard 3 cards to exile Nezahal and return it tapped under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. So it has this kind of built-in like removal protection. But Nezahal is great here because if people decide to just cast their non-creature spells through Dovescape and get birds because they want defenders or they want to be able to attack, they want to do something with their cards, Nezahal is going to draw you cards off of it and either help you get to stuff that deals with it or get to just better spells, obviously, or it might even deter them from getting those birds. They might now not even want to do that anymore, depending on the board state, obviously. But I think that's like that double-sided thing. It's kind of like Darian, right? It's like this double-sided thing where like it's not going to want them to attack, but if they do, we get something. It's like it's like if they cast their non-creature spells, we get to draw. But if they don't cast them and we don't draw, that's also fine. Doing double duty, I love it.
Dubs doots.
And then what's the last bit of a neat move here?
Oh, we hinted at with Darian, but we're going to run cards like Sphere of Safety, specifically 4 and a white for an enchantment. Creatures can't attack you or a planeswalker you control unless their controller plays X for each of those creatures, where X is the number of enchantments you control. This compares to Propaganda, Ghostly Prison, all those kinds of things. Those cards are a bit more expensive in real world money, but Sphere of Safety is still on the cheaper side because it costs 5, and it's still a couple bucks. But if you only have this and Dovescape, they're only paying 2 per creature, but even making your opponents pay 1 more per creature is significant because most of how they're going to defeat you is with an army of birds once Dovescape is down. And so anything like this, like they just won't be able to pay 1 per bird. They just won't. So great, good, you did it.
Yep, absolutely. And again, this does double duty. If this comes down before Dovescape or anything like that, it's fine too, just to prevent people from killing you early.
And what world does your opponent destroy this over Dovescape if they have the choice?
Exactly, right? Yeah, definitely. So that's cool. Great. Well, yeah, that's kind of what we want to do. We want to get out all these birds. You know what? Everyone can have birds. It's fine. There's not a lot of specific bird synergy here, but we definitely have a lot of cool token synergy and a lot of powerful cards in here. I wanted to highlight one surprise / discovery, which is something we've been our attention has been brought to this card in the past, but we haven't mentioned it in a really long time, and I kind of rediscovered it again. It's Parallel Thoughts. So this is a 3 blue for an enchantment. It says when Parallel Thoughts comes into play. Sorry, I'll just read the Oracle text. When Parallel Thoughts enters the battlefield, search your library for 7 cards, exile them in a face-down pile, and shuffle that pile. Ooh, you shuffle that pile. That's interesting. Then shuffle your library. If you would draw a card, you may instead put the top card of the pile you exiled into your hand. So I actually just discovered the shuffle that pile thing.
Oh.
But that's fine too, actually. It's not really that bad. Basically what this does is it kind of like pseudo tutors you for these 7 cards that you're finding, right? So you can do something even as like if you have everything you have, like you could even make this just be lands. Like it's like, oh, now I definitely want to draw a land this turn, so I'll do that. I mean, I think that's the absolute bottom last case scenario you'd want to do. But ideally what we do here is we put a couple cards like we put Dovescape in here. This is going to help us get Dovescape. Teamed up with some draw, this kind of becomes a kind of like super dig through time, right? Like it's it's in there. So it's just a matter of drawing to it. So whether you want to wait naturally, that's fine. Whether you want to force the draw, like actually have some things like draw spells and things like that to get to what you've done after you did your Parallel Thoughts, I think either way is pretty okay. It's just a matter of like how much does this draw hate? How often will this get destroyed? Because if it gets destroyed, those cards remain in exile.
Yeah, I think
which is risky.
It's risky, and you don't know if the card that you want, aka Dovescape, is in the top of the 7 or the bottom of the 7. So I think the move with this card is put 1, 2, maybe 3 key cards that you want and a bunch of instant speed draw spells along with it. So if I draw top card and it's an instant draw spell, I'll just use it right away and get the next one off of Parallel Thoughts. And hopefully that's just a way to treat it like it's like, well, I know there's 7 cards in this pile, but there's functionally maybe like 4 or 3 or 2.
That is a great idea. I think you're absolutely right. I think that's the best way to use this card. And I think this card can be quite good. And I think that unless they do it right away, I think your opponent's using a removal spell on this enchantment is kind of bad for them. Like
yeah. I mean, if they know this deck and they know it's all about Dovescape and they just want to hate that you might get it, like, yeah, that sucks. But like, what are the like, this just requires your opponents to just fear the unknown so hard.
Yeah.
In Commander, we don't get that luxury. We have to deal with what's on the table now. I guarantee when you drop a Parallel Thoughts, there's another enchantment on the battlefield that's doing worse right now that needs to be dealt with. Whereas if you get rid of Parallel Thoughts, you haven't really done anything because they haven't yet drawn or cast the cards that you're worried about.
You kind of end up, if they get rid of Parallel Thoughts right away, it's going to feel bad, but they kind of countered a Diabolic Tutor but then also exiled the cards. So like, it's going to feel bad if it happens to you, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't mean you're dead. Like this deck does function, and I think it's still quite good without Dovescape. You just have to lean a little harder on Taigam's rebound ability, because there's a whole slew of cards in here that are just really cool, big instants and sorceries that are going to get you lots of value. And if you rebound them, like you're going to be looking pretty good. Blatant thievery, things like that, right?
Cool.
Anyways, but this is a neat card, and I think it's good. I think it's pretty good.
I think so too. Let's talk about our budget report.
Yeah.
This is where we take the cards and we see which ones are allowed to be bought, or which ones, when you buy them, you get a box full of doves instead.
You get a box full of birds. Yeah.
So this deck, we have a couple pricey cards. We'll cover those, but this deck comes in just a hair over $100, 104 or like 98, depending on which website you do to check it. And half of the value of this deck sits in 9 cards. So the 3 most expensive cards, number 1 is Monastery Mentor. We mentioned this person before, this monk that makes monk tokens. This is a $10 card. You could probably cut it just fine and save $10 that way. What's number 2?
Yeah, you could cut it and save $10, but also I will say that this is like one of the main engines if your Dovescape ever gets exiled or something, right?
Yeah.
Or gets destroyed. It's really great for that. So actually I would work hard to try and keep it in. The next one is Archangel of Tabs, 1 white for a 3/5 flying angel that says, as long as Archangel of Tabs is tapped, creatures can't attack you or a planeswalker you control unless their controller pays 1 generic for each of those creatures. And then as long as Archangel of Tabs is attacking, creatures can't block unless their controller pays 1 for each of those creatures. So this is one that hardcore works really well with Dovescape. But again, this is a token deck, so it's just going to be good in general. This is one, though, that I would say that although it's really, really good, we have a couple of redundant effects that do this, like Sphere of Safety and all that kind of stuff. So this one offers the uniqueness of the attacking, and they have to pay for blocking.
Yeah, there's no other card I can think of that makes you have to pay to block. So like, that's pretty brutal if you're coming in with 20 birds.
There's a red card that does it, but anyways, obviously not relevant to this, but there's at least one red card that does it. That's really good. But anyways, but Archangel Tabs is good. Yeah, if you want to save money off, I think it is cuttable.
Yeah, $7.50 for that one. And then Anointed Procession, recently printed in Amonkhet. It's the white parallel lives, 3 in a white for an enchantment. If an effect would create 1 or more tokens, you get double. So obviously, if we're making a ton of birds, that's amazing. We've got a lot of other tokens. This is just a strong card. And as predicted, it's already pushing, like, it's between $8 to $10, depending where you shop. So this is a pricey card. Do we need it? These are such difficult cards to evaluate because obviously they double everything you do from this point forward. So that's very good. But how valuable is that to you? Like, is that a win more? Are we making enough tokens otherwise? You can never tell. I mean, if you've got a copy, if you opened one, for sure you're going to want to run it here. But I think you could probably save the $7 and just leave it out and do more fun stuff. We've got another enchantment to talk about in a moment that I would rather run over this if I had to make the choice.
Yeah, I think you're never going to be unhappy to see Anointed Procession, but there is something about, you're going to be making lots of birds anyways. So it's actually, of all the token decks I've ever included this card in, it's one of the ones where I think it's the least essential.
Yeah.
So there you go.
So let's move on to the 3 stars of the deck, and we'll get right to it with the 3rd star as the enchantment that I think is.
Oh, this is I would say this is probably the 1st star.
Oh, this is first. So we're going to the other order. Okay, so
yeah, I think so. So let's go backwards.
Okay, so the 3rd star of the deck is Archangel of Tabs, as talked about before. We said you could maybe cut this if you wanted to, but again, it does such strong work, and that's mainly because of the unique ability of making your opponents pay per blocker.
Yeah,
that makes it very strong in this deck.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird in that there's some other cards that do this similar things as it, but like you said, that blocking ability is really good. It's undeniable that it's a star, but it's also like, if you really want to cut it, you could. It's weird. It's one of the only times I think I've ever thought that about a card in a deck, where it's like it's a star of the deck, but like you don't need it.
Yeah.
The number 2 star is Loyal Unicorn. This is a recent printing from the most recent Commander set, and this is like, man, I'm loving this card. It's 3 and a white, 3/4 Unicorn Vigilance. It has Lieutenant, so at the beginning of combat on your turn, if you control your commander, prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to creatures you control this turn, and other creatures you control gain Vigilance until end of turn. So this is going to protect Taigam if that's all you have and you want to get some rebound going. Taigam can attack, get you that trigger. It's also obviously going to protect your birds going into their birds and kill their birds. Also giving them Vigilance so you can still block. Like, this card is amazing at any stage of the game.
Yeah, great. Probably keep this one in for sure.
And it doesn't need to attack either, which is amazing.
And then the number 1 star of the deck, as discussed, the enchantment that I think is better than Parallel,
or Anointed Procession. I agree with you. I think so too.
Yeah, is Divine Visitation. It's brand new from Guilds of Ravnica. 3 white for an enchantment. It's mythic. If 1 or more creature tokens would be created under your control, that many 4/4 white angel tokens with flying and vigilance are created instead. You like 1/1 birds? How do you like 4 Sarah Angels?
Yeah, how do you like Sarah Angels instead? Yeah, I agree with you in that this is probably better than Anointed Procession, just because I think I'd just rather have 4 Sarah Angels than rather have 8 birds.
This is an interesting discussion in general in any white token based deck. Like, is this better than Anointed Procession across the board? Would we run the equivalent in green? Like, would we take a green enchantment that gave us 6/6 tramplers instead of whatever token, right? Like, instead of Parallel Lives. I think so.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, so this is
it's interesting because green, yes, it can make many small tokens. It has lots of things that do that. But there's also lots of green spells that make like a 3/3 or a 4, like you're saying, like a 5/5.
But if you already want Parallel Lives.
So it is, all I'm saying is that, like, in white, Divine Visitation is like an A+. But in green, the green equivalent would still be very good, don't get me wrong, but I think it loses a tiny bit of value just because, like, it's not making my 5/5 worms any better. But like white already basically only makes small things anyways.
I think it's deck dependent. I think if your deck already has Anointed Procession, is Divine Visitation just an upgrade from it?
It's not just an upgrade because both together are incredible.
Yes. No, that's true. That is entirely true. And then one is getting pricey. This one's like $5.
Does Divine Visitation do what I think it does if you have Anointed Procession?
Oh yeah, you get double the angels.
You get even double the angels, though.
No, sorry. No,
does it not do that?
No.
So like, if I made 1 bird, that's Anointed Procession will then make 2 birds.
And Divine Visitation says, but then those aren't birds, those are angels.
Those aren't birds, those are angels. But it doesn't then Anointed Procession doesn't see Divine Visitation making them and making more, right?
No.
Okay. Because that's stupid. Because that is dumb. So this is a replacement effect or whatever, not a trigger thing. Okay, cool. Good thing we fully understand the rules on this show. Perfect. Okay, great. Well, there you go. That's it. This deck is really, really fun. And I do want to stress that while Dovescape is so good and so fun, it's not going to be fun for your opponents, A, and B, it's not 100% necessary to make the deck work. There's still lots of cool token makers and lots of cool stuff to do with Taigam that we kind of didn't even really touch on. Like, there's a lot of good rebound spells in here that we've included that are really, really fun, really, really cool to use. So,
oh yeah, take a look at the deck list on Tapped Out if you want to like
Yeah.
look at that and see some of those. Yeah.
absolutely. So, yeah, I mean that's the deck this week. That's the show. We'll see you guys next time. Thanks for listening and watching.
Bye.
Bye.
Big thanks to all our patrons who make these episodes possible.
Yeah, and if you want to check out more comedy videos, check out our Brews News playlist.
Make sure you follow us on Twitch TV to see when we play live.
If you want to chat with us, head over to Twitter. We're at Commanders Brew.
And please hit subscribe to ding the bell and find out when we got new stuff coming out.
See you next time.
Bye.